Okay, hello Marco, this is Bev. All right, let's look at your task one. Okay, so it's about forecasted visits to three different cities in Europe from three different countries. Okay, and you need to be very clear about what it is you are describing. I've glanced through your essay and it can be a little confusing to the reader. Okay, so let's just go through it and I'll show you where you need to clarify or be a little bit more succinct in what you are saying. Okay, so your first sentence you say the US had the highest number of visitors. Okay, that's incorrect because the visitors were visiting London, Paris, Madrid, and Istanbul. Okay, so the you need to say that the highest number of visitors to such and such a city came from the US or were US citizens. Okay. Um, so the way that you've worded this is not very clear. It's confusing. Okay, because it's the highest number of visitors for which city. Okay. So your second part is correct. You can say that for Americans, Paris is likely to be the favored destination with 100,000 visits expected. Remember that this is a forecast, so everything is about estimates in the future. Okay, so the French capital is followed, as you can say, is expected to receive. Okay, so here, all of these sentences, you are talking about American visitors and you're talking about three cities. Okay, so you need to be very careful of how you explain that. So you can say, for example, the number of forecasted American tourists to the three capitals, namely Paris, London, and Madrid, is expected to be 100,000, 80,000, 65,000, and 60,000 respectively. Okay. Um, Regarding Canadians, their most marked city is Istanbul at 65,000. Okay, you need to change that wording around. You can say, looking at the number of forecasted visits from Canadians to these cities, it is expected that Istanbul is expected to receive 65,000 Canadian visits, with the least desirable destination being Madrid, with an expected number of 25,000 visits. Okay? The second most popular city amongst Canadians is London, while the third most desirable destination for Canadians is Paris, with an expected 42,000 visits. Okay, you need to word it along those lines. Mexico, I wouldn't say Mexico represents the lowest number of expected travels because it sounds as though the travelers are traveling to Mexico. Okay, so that sentence again is confusing as the first one is here there. Okay, you need to just start with looking at the Mexican visitors. The most popular city for Mexican visitors, you could say, is expected to be Madrid, with at 63,000, and the least popular destination for visitors from Mexico is expected to be Istanbul and London at 20,000, with just slightly more visitors expected in Paris. Okay, you don't say last and first because that's kind of like a race. We are talking about quantities and numbers of visitors. Okay, to summarize, each country has indicated a different preference. I wouldn't say each country, but I would say each group of visitors. Okay, in fact, while travelers from the US prefer Paris, the favorite city for Canadians seems to be Istanbul, while Mexicans tend to prefer Madrid. Okay, and I would say I wouldn't talk about preferences here because remember in task one it's all about facts and figures. What I would word this a little bit differently and say, to summarize, it's not about the countries, it's the destinations, okay? Different destinations can expect different numbers from the three non-European countries, okay? Or you can name them. You can say, to summarize, the expected number of visitors from Mexico, Canada, and the United States, or the expected number of visits to the cities of London, Paris, Madrid, and Istanbul from the three countries varies very significantly. Okay, from the graph, it shows that visitors from the US prefer Paris, while Canadians tend to prefer, Canadians' city of choice is Istanbul, and whereas Madrid can expect the most visitors to come from Mexico. Okay, so you need to just change that around a little to make it clear. Otherwise, your word count is fine, your spelling is good. You just need to change the word order around so your coherence and cohesion needs to be worked on. And when I say grammar, I'm talking about word order and sentence order. Okay, so Marco, let's take a look at your task 2. Okay, let's just bring it into the viewing pane. Okay. So the issue of technology has grown in importance over the past two decades. On the one hand, some people think that technological development can be damaging to our intelligence, whilst on the other hand, others hold that it can improve our intellectual skills. Lovely introduction, Marco. Very good. Right, so firstly, technology is supposed to serve man. Therefore, the adaptation of humans to technology can have several negative implications. For example, more and more people are becoming pathologically addicted to social media and video games. And video games is 2 words. This happens when technology is not properly considered. I would use a different word choice there. It's not properly utilized, I think is what you want to say. But it rather becomes a replacement for real life. In situations like these, the human mind may hardly receive any positive incentive. Now, I'm not clear on what you mean by that. In other words, stimulation. I'm not quite sure. You need to be a bit more clear what you mean there. However, this disadvantage is not caused by technology as such, but by its abuse. I wouldn't say abuse, because the technology is not suffering, but by misuse or excessive use. It's excessive, unnecessary use. Okay. Secondly, it is also true that the correct use of technological tools may benefit our intellectual growth. Good. For instance, the easy and quick access to a great amount of literature and scientific material may be an important help. I wouldn't say important help, I would just say may be considered important for research and self-study. Moreover, the not continual but continuous or the ongoing development of communication can foster the interactions, I'll take away the S, between people from different countries and cultures. Okay, this could prove to be beneficial. Okay, not would result helpful. This could prove to be beneficial in an academic environment. Furthermore, it would also be intellectually beneficial for private purposes unrelated to formal education. These, not this, but these 2 examples clearly show how technology can have several applications for the enrichment of the intellectual ability of today's people. Okay. To conclude, I believe that technology can be intellectually detrimental only when it is overused. In fact, I also think that responsible use and development of technological devices may produce many stimulating opportunities for the improvement of the human mind. Okay, Marco, very well written essay. I'm just checking your word count here. You've answered the question well. You've balanced your argument. You've put across your opinion. What you perhaps need to say here is, in this essay, this essay will discuss both sides of this issue, okay? Because you put here one hand and on the other hand, okay? Because in your task 2 essay, you have an option of showing both sides, agreeing and giving support, or disagreeing and giving support, okay? You've chosen to show both sides of the argument, okay? But I think your biggest argument here is that you don't feel that it affects our intellectual ability. So you need to make a comment there and say, to show how technology excuse me, can have several applications for the enrichment of the intellectual ability of today's people. Okay. Therefore, or you might want to put it in here. So you might want to say how, I guess you have actually said it here, but you've said it the other way around. It's fine, yeah. As this essay stands here, sure, 7.5, I would say. You would lose a little bit because one or two of the sentences need to be changed around a little, okay, to make an 8, and there's one or two common errors, okay, like hyphenating, and the use of the subject plural agreement. Okay, so just touch up on those, and you would then definitely achieve an 8. Okay, excellent work, Marco.